Hi, I'm Richard. I'm here at PAX East, and we are showing off The Church in the Darkness. So The Church in the Darkness is a top-down action infiltration game set inside a religious cult in the 1970s with a story that changes every time you play. So I call it action infiltration. It's sort of like fast-paced stealth. So you're trying to get inside this cult group. They've built a little compound in South America that they call Freedom Town, and you're trying to get in there to find your nephew Alex. So it's not about murdering everyone you find along the way. You know, a lot of times, like if you were doing this as a shooter, you'd just be killing all the cult members all the time. Here we're trying to more avoid detection. Like imagine how you would really do it. How would you go into a cult to try to check on someone? You would try to avoid detection. You would try to hide in the shadows as much as possible. You'd try to maybe put on a good disguise, that sort of thing. So we let you do all that stuff, and you can also kill them if you want to, but it's really up to how you want to play the game. So in the game, you're looking for your nephew Alex. He's 19, 20 years old. Your sister is worried about him because she's back in the US and he's moved down to South America with the collective justice mission to go to Freedom Town. So you're trying to find Alex, see if he's okay, see if he wants to leave, see if he wants to stay, and it's sort of up to the player what they do. Yeah, the name is kind of interesting because it can mean a bunch of different things, and I liked, In the Darkness is a cool thing, and you can think of like Heart of Darkness, is a famous novel. It was one of the inspirations for like Apocalypse Now, and that seemed like a fitting thing. That was very different, obviously, wasn't set in South America, but I liked that sort of ring to it, but then also church seems to like let you know right away it's got some religious themes, it takes that seriously, but also a church in the darkness can mean, either we might see them as a church in the darkness because we think they're a creepy cult or whatever, but they themselves see themselves as a church that stands out from the darkness. They say the rest of the world is in darkness, so they want to do their own thing. And there's various other interpretations you can have to the name, and that's kind of why I like it, because it's interesting, but you don't know exactly what it means. So I've been making games for a while, actually. I started right out of college, did a couple of what were indie games essentially, but were just called small games at the time, called Odyssey and then Damage Incorporated. Then I went to work at AAA for about 15 years, worked on things like The Suffering, horror games. I did, most recently I was at Microsoft, worked on stuff like Quantum Break and Sunset Overdrive and then State of Decay. So I grew up with an Apple II, played a lot of things on that, everything from Bard's Tale, RPGs, and the early Ultimas like Ultima 4, to things like the original Mario Brothers, the arcade version. We had a great version of that for the Apple II. And then one of my favorite games was Castle Wolfenstein. The original, before it was a shooter, it was a top-down, infiltrate a castle game that was randomly generated and had all this cool stuff in it. So the Castle Wolfenstein was actually one of my inspirations for this game. It was seeing that type of top-down infiltration is something I hadn't seen in a while, and I thought, I really like Wolfenstein, hadn't seen it for a while, maybe we could do it in an indie game. I think it helps when you're making an indie game if you do something that people can't get anywhere else these days, whether it's an old game or just some crazy new idea. So that was part of it. Another part was, I've been fascinated by cults for a long time. Cults are really, obviously there's sort of the dark side to it, and I'm fascinated by dark subject matter, but also just people like trying to create a new society is really interesting to me, and like separating themselves from society to go do it somewhere else, and they do it even though everyone says they're weird or crazy or whatever, and they just have this vision for this different thing. And I just always thought that would be a great setting for a video game. I think ultimately, as a creator, particularly working on an indie game, you kind of need to make a game for yourself. You kind of need to make the thing that you want to play that you don't see out there and hope that there's enough other people who will be into it. Obviously, I have other games I'd like to make for myself that I think less other people might be into. So this is one that I do think people who like old Metal Gear or like sort of creepy narrative games can get into this. But it's really a game I really want to play. Yeah, so this is not my first game. I've shipped probably something like 20 games between like AAA stuff and my own indie stuff and different editions of different games. This is probably like, if I were to count the games where I was really driving the entire production. This is probably like my 5th or 6th of those. So a lot of people remember me for The Suffering, which was a horror game that came out on the PS2 and original Xbox and PC. It's just re-released on GOG, so you can go check it out if you want. And it's a horror game set inside a haunted prison where you're trying to, and you've been sentenced to die there, and you're trying to find out if you're guilty of the crime or not. So it's a pretty tight team. I think there's about 15 people in the credits or so. There's probably like 6 or 7 of them working on it right now in different ways. I'm the one who's spending most of the time as I do the design and the writing and the programming and sort of managing the whole process. We started about 3.5 years ago or something. We worked on some other projects as well along the way, or at least I did and some of the other team members did. But so we've been going about 3.5 years. So the game's in the Unity engine, and we're using C#. You know, it sounds ridiculous, but I use the Microsoft Word suite a lot. So I use Excel for generating, like, balancing things. I use Word to write the scripts. I use PowerPoint to make flowcharts and things like that. Actually, I just like PowerPoint for that sort of thing. We use that a lot. You know, other members of the team use Max or Maya for 3D modeling, use Audacity for audio stuff. I use GIMP for 2D art stuff. Some of the other team members use Photoshop and the Creative Cloud. It sort of all depends on what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, I think every game I've worked on, there's been a ton of stuff that's learned, and that's sort of my favorite part of the whole process is research. Like before you, like working on a narrative game, I think you need to do a lot of research about your subject matter. You can never know enough. So I've just learned about so many different cults that I ever knew about. There were obviously ones I knew a lot about going in that sort of got me into it, but you know, just learning a lot more about Heaven's Gate, for example. I just listened to a great podcast about Heaven's Gate that was fantastic, and it just revealed how much more fascinating that group was than I ever knew. No, this is our second time at PAX East, and we've shown the game at PAX West twice as well, and I've been to PAX West a zillion times. Yeah, I mean, at this show so far, I've been in our booth, so it's much like showing our game at other conferences, because there I'm in our booth as well. But yeah, I mean, the PAX series of shows is really cool because of the diversity of things it has, and when you're not in your booth the whole time, there's a lot of different stuff to see. I've definitely enjoyed panels in the past, and I've enjoyed things like the Diversity Lounge, and I've enjoyed, like, most of all, probably running into my friends. So. So we have a website at paranoidproductions.com/church, or you can just Google The Church in the Darkness. That'll be one of the top hits. You can also find us on Steam right now. If you want to wish list it, that's one of the top hits on Google as well, if you search for The Church in the Darkness. We're also got Twitter at Church Darkness. We got a Facebook page. You can go there. There's even a Tumblr with some development blog stuff on it. So lots of ways to find us.